Well, good morning and welcome to Travels with Geordie. Today we have the really fun project, and by that I mean really miserable, of taking the lines off the boat. I want to 3D model the boat and I have to measure it. Stay tuned. To get the lines off the boat, that's an expression used to get the shape, the hull, all the different stations. In other words, a way to measure the boat. But it's a three-dimensional object that's pretty sophisticated, and doing it from the inside is going to be really difficult. But I've been putting it off forever. I really want to get it done. Let me show you how we're going to do it. Are you going to be any help, pup? Come on, puppy. Give me a hand here. He's been out this morning, he's run with the dogs, and this is his day. Okay, so let's take a little tour from forward to aft. Now, you've all been on the boat before, and so you know sort of what's going on. My idea is to string a really taut line. Now, if I show you all these companionways, this companionway, hello pup, that companionway, and the companionway to the aft cabin are all offset to starboard. Basically, this side of it is basically the middle of the boat. The middle of the boat's about there, and it's similar in all the places. Now, as we move forward, now this is embarrassing. This is my forward head, and it is also my junk storage. Yes, apologize about that, but that's the nature of living on a boat. Forward of it, that's the chain locker. Both these hatches are on the center line. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tie a string right from the stem, way in the front of the chain locker, and I'm going to run it all the way through the boat, back exactly 2 inches or so off the center line. That way it'll miss this door jamb, it'll miss this door jamb, sliding right through here somewhere, and it'll miss this door jamb as we get to the cockpit. Hello, Griffey! Yes, we're going to be tying some string out here in a minute, so just stay cool. And I'll tie it to some plank across the transom gate there. And what that gives me is a datum. Now, it's not the exact center line of the boat, but at least I know where it is. Then I'll go through my... Hey, what are you doing, pup? Come and say hi. From then, I'll create basically a measuring stick. A stick that I'll sit on the sole with a little tripod on it so it stays relatively flat, I can measure from. And that will give me stations all the way along the boat, and at certain locations I'll be able to actually measure the hull. Now, the boat is not complete, so there's some openings. Well, I can get at the hull in some places down here in the lazarette. I can't get in down here, but I can get in through that locker past the steering gear. So that'll help a little bit. As we move forward, the boat is actually open. For those of you who watch the steering project behind this chair here, so I can measure pretty much to those frames, and of course this ceiling is directly on the frames, so I can easily interpolate where that's going to be there. Also, under here, this is all just storage, and the frames are available largely. As we move forward, the bathroom can't do much with it. This fiberglass is outside, in other words inside the stringers, so I'm not quite sure where it is though, so I can't really use that much to measure. But again, on the other side, I have both above and below the bed relatively available. Moving to the wheelhouse, the whole port side of the boat is relatively available. I'll have to move a lot of wood to get to it. To this side I have a little bit of a gap too, and I can get at some stuff here. And as we move forward, where we just were, the starboard side, my little office, I'm having to move cushions around, but if you can see down through my closet, there is the inside of the hull. So for most of the boat, I'm able to reach, or in other words measure to most of at least one side or the other, and the boat should be symmetrical. So let's see, let's get started and just see how it goes. Cheers! By far the largest volume of stuff I have aboard the boat is tools, but followed closely by musical instruments, and actually several of them are in storage off the boat right now. Alright then folks, so this is going to be a bit hack. I'm going to turn this nasty old piece of spruce 1x6 into what I mentioned as some kind of sort of a story pole I would use in the construction industry. Basically a vertical measuring device where I can use it to line up more. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. I think I mentioned the string that I'm putting down the center of the boat is going to be offset. It's actually going to be offset by 4 inches because of a door that's in the way. But anyway, as long as I know what it is. So I'm going to rip the remaining piece here, my vertical piece, to exactly 4 inches, so that the side of it will just touch the string, will give me my datum for the other edge of it to be the very center line of the boat. And to do that, I'm going to use a ripping guide. We're all familiar with these little doohickeys to go in your saw. Very, very handy. There we go. Okay, so this is a pretty quick pack little kit. I'm going to make a Charlie Brown style with some little blocks to make it level. Christmas tree base, going to get attached to this, and we're going to put 3 braces on it. And I'll show you in a minute why we're not going to put 4. Oh yeah! You'll recognize the tree base. I'm using Craig screws because these are self-tapping, self-drilling, and shouldn't split too badly here, but we'll see. 2 little blocks on the upper one to make it proper. Okay folks, what we have here is, yes, a Charlie Brown Christmas tree. So the string will be taut through the boat, dead on, well, exactly 4 inches off the center line, but 4 inches at the bow, 4 inches at the stern. And in terms of height, I'm going to try and make it parallel with the Wheelhouse sole. Now I don't know what is the parallel, what boats are based on. It's probably the bottom of the keel. I'd like to think that the sole and the keel are parallel, but I have no way of knowing that. I do have an old drawing of a monk, not this one, that I can confirm that with, but I just need a datum. It doesn't matter what it is as long as I stick with it, and it's pretty easy to achieve. So it will be parallel with the sole, and it will be roughly 4 inches off the center line. This piece of wood being exactly 4 inches means that if I then, once the string is here, shift this around, so this edge of it is exactly just touching the string, then this edge of it is absolutely perfectly vertical and in the very, very center of the boat. I can then use that as a datum to measure offsets in both directions, and we'll get into that future, but what I'm trying to do is establish at least some datum. So what I'm going to need to do is wherever the datum string lands on here, I'm going to be able to measure down or possibly up to cross strings that I put in that will tell me the heights of various things like window heights and stringers and the deck. Well, I don't want to be constantly measuring on this, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to zip tie a tape measure to the bottom of it, and then every time I move this, I'll put a screw in, put the datum, and hang the tape on it. That means from the datum down is always measured on here. Yes, I'll have to measure things up, but mostly what I'm trying to measure is the hull. I'll take advantage of this time to also measure as much of the superstructure as possible, but I'm not so, concerned about that. Okay, let's zip tie a tape measure onto the bottom of this. There we go. And now I can bring the tape up and down and attach it to wherever the datum happens to be at the time and measure down from there for other things. Okay. So that string is not in the right position yet, but it's latched in against that door frame. Let's go aft. Yeah, sorry buddy boy, I'm going back there right now. About there somewhere. Okay. Okay, well actually it wasn't easy, but it was easier than I thought it would be. So the string is now exactly 4 inches offset at the transom. The dogs have absolutely no idea what's going on. We're exactly 4 inches offset here, 4 inches offset there, and 4 inches offset at the chain locker way forward. So that worked out really well. Now it's also exactly 30 inches from the sole at the forward end of the wheelhouse, and it's exactly 30 inches from the sole at the aft end of the wheelhouse. So that worked out really well. What's neat, and I didn't expect it, the aft cabin sole is parallel with the wheelhouse sole. It's exactly 50 inches from the string to the aft cabin sole all the way to the back where the step is. Of course, the cockpit sole I built, and I built it with a slope, so it's sloping down because it'll have cockpit drains at the back. Okay, let's have a quick review of what it is I'm trying to achieve here. I'm trying to make a drawing of the boat, a 3D model of the boat, but it's very hard to determine exactly the shape of the hull unless I can get control points all the way along that. So if you imagine the boat from the top looks sort of like this, right? That's kind of long and skinny. So we have the various bulkheads, the fore cabin, the wheelhouse, the bathroom is here, my bed is here, and then the aft bulkhead and the cockpit is here. Okay, so I basically need to take slices through the boat at all these locations, not necessarily where the bulkheads are, but at an even pattern. And those are called stations, and they're equally divided up from front to back along whatever you want to call the gap space between the stations are. Now we can get into what distance I'm going to do in a minute, but so let's look at what a station looks like. Let's say at the very bow. Well, at the very bow it's going to look pretty straightforward. There's the deck, and it's going to come down pretty much to a point and come back up again. That's what the very bow of the boat looks like, about 2 or 3 feet back from the bow. As we move back, the deck will be more like this, and the boat will be more like this, and then there's a keel obviously down, and it'll look more like that. As we move further aft, the shape of the boat will change because we'll be getting to a cabin. So there's the cabin top, the cabin sides, the decks, and then the shape of the boat will become more like this. There's the keel, and it gets more like that. Now there's an extra complication which I'll get to in a minute, but let's just move right to the back of the boat where we're at the cockpit. So the boat has side decks, and it has the cockpit sole, and the shape of the boat is almost flat, and the keel comes up like that. Now this boat is a bit particular right at what they call the chine, and what it is it actually has a hard chine. So these drawings aren't exactly accurate because at the back of the boat, if that's the keel, the bottom of the hull is almost straight on a slope and then turns very quickly and becomes the curve or the tumble home of the boat. So right here there's a very sharp bend, and that becomes less and less pronounced as we go forward. I won't get into that too much now because we're going to talk about that in detail later on, especially when we figure out how to strengthen the boat. But what I have to do is basically get all these cross sections of the boat and get some control points. In other words, here's my string or my center line, here's my vertical board that I can measure from, and I'll measure across to both sides at various heights, and that will give me, and down, and that will give me some control points, which then I have like this, and then I basically just draw a line between them and it creates the shape of the hull. Now I'm not going to be able to get a full set of control points at every station because there's too much stuff in the way. The best I'm going to do is be able to get on one side of the boat and most of the boat, and that's okay because the boat is symmetrical left and right, or it's supposed to be. But anyway, you can sort of see what I'm up to now. Let's get on with it. Back to the stations. How far apart shall I put the stations? Well, the closer they are together, technically, the smaller the granularity, the higher the resolution, the better the job I'm going to do. But at a certain point, there's a diminishing return. It's just not going to get better measurements, and it's going to take me forever to do it. So a kind of casual spacing might be 2 feet. 38 feet long, divided into 2 feet, be fine. Again, let's carry on. First, I have to mark off the string with the stations, and which just means a piece of tape. Okay then, so one of the nice perks of my construction background is a 200-foot tape measure. So I'm going to try and do this with only 2 hands, which means putting a piece of tape over. Okay, so easy peasy. But 1 at 2 feet, 4 feet. All right, see ya. 6, 8, 10, 12. That wasn't much fun. All right, so labeling the stations from the bow aft, 38 feet long, every 2 feet. 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. Okay, so I'm trying to be really clever here. Let's see how far this goes before it goes completely sideways. I've placed my story pole with the right edge of it just touching the string. Just touching the string. And I put a screw in at the height of the string. Now I can bring my tape measure up and hook it on the screw. So it's easy for me to put datums down from here, and I'll do some of those now. And the way I'm going to do that is take a string and stretch it across the boat from known things the same on both sides. So in the case of a stringer, it's easy, the bottom of the deck, the top of the deck, a window, etc. And I'm going to try and do that by clipping the string on to various things with little squeeze clamps. Let's see how we do. Okay then, so you can see I have clipped the string to the frame there just below the deck, and over on the other side I have done the same thing, and I have taken a mental note that is a 1/4 inch below the deck out there because I can't quite get the clamp to hold it at the top. And if I bring it to the tape measure, and yes, it's touching a little bit, but I'm okay with that, I'm going to say it's a 1/4 inch higher than that, or 2 3/4 below the datum. Am I starting to get some real information here? This is going to take forever. Well, I've taken a ton of measurements in different directions. Not all of this will mean anything, but basically measuring along the line that I stretched from the hull to the hull, how far over, how far down to the various stringers, to the various sections of the thwarts and the cockpit sole. Now I'm going to lift up this section, the aft section of the sole, and take some measurements down to the bottom of the hull. 4 feet and 1/8. And now down to the actual bottom of the planking, 51. Okay, that is enough control points for this station. As I move forward, I will probably move a little quicker and take less control points, but this one I was able to have a pretty good view, so to speak, of the entire inside of the hull. For instance, at this next station, I have very little information because I can't go through the sole, and, well, it's not too bad. Anyway, let's see how we do. This station that's right at the bulkhead, there's not much I can get to, but the very next one will have tons of information, so again, as I interpolate my way along, we'll do great. Let's go inside. Oh, yeah. I can actually say that this is going remarkably well. So that is 26 3/4. Okay, so it's been a few stations since we looked down into the bilge. You can see right there is the deadwood, the keel basically, and down below it, down there would be the bottom of the hull. And this is the height of the floors, but I have that basically from the floor, the sole height. So let's say the top of the deadwood here is going to be roughly 54, and the bottom of the hull 56 3/4. It's working great, and that's what matters. Well, there's very little I can do at Station 22. Okay, so I moved up into the wheelhouse, which in some ways is marvelous, and in some ways is absolutely miserable. Access to the inside of the hull there is a pain because there's a ton of wood under there, and of course access to the hull under the sole is a pain because this sole doesn't come up easily, and there is so much junk in the bilge. Okay. It's the strangest sole arrangement. Multi-layered, unusual, whatever. Okay, what we have here is a huge diesel tank, which of course is great. That is really in the way for seeing anything else. Oh yeah. This tape on the story pole thing, I use it for 1 or 2 measurements per station. It probably isn't all that valuable, but it was kind of fun. So 7 and 21 for 2 stringers. Again, down in the abyss, but I do have good access to the chine stringer. It's actually going. It's like I just have a peekaboo view to everything I really need, which is fantastic. Here's another joyous spot. Okay. Actually, there's an extraordinary amount of room here because so the engine doesn't start till here. So there's this great big super highway of space here to hang out in and store junk in. Okay. All right. So 65 3/4. Well, this certainly isn't getting any less awkward as I move forward. Too much stuff. Imagine working on a boat and nothing was aboard. Oh gosh. And in a shed. That would be amazing. I have reasonably good access to the inside of the hull on the starboard side here because I've opened it up and haven't closed it up at all yet. So let's see what we can do. I'm not likely to bring you down here because that camera In this small space, all you'll see is the tips of my fingers. And here we have, it's kind of a shame to take it down. Progress. Fun, fun. Alright, so if you know anyone that needs one of these, I have it all ready to go. Oh my gosh, okay, well I have a lot of data, a lot. After station, I mean, anyway, I'm not going to go through it all, but lots and lots and lots. So now I got to put this all on the computer. Want to join me? Okay folks, I don't know how well this is going to show on the camera. I'll try a screen capture later. So I'm starting to lay out all the stations on the computer in CAD. I use AutoCAD. So I've done the very aft station, station number 36. Done all the stations along to the broadest part of the boat. And now it's getting a little complicated because as I look from the back, I just see so much stuff. So I'm going to turn off these sections and work my way so every new section gets smaller. But it's generally going okay. There's some outliers, and that's definitely to be expected. So once I have all the stations in, I can connect them together, and in elevation, which is from the side, and in planned, which is from above, I'll be able to see where the real bad outliers are and stretch it all together again. Well, 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 here we are. Okay, we have all the stations in, and this is just the raw data. If you look carefully in here, you can see an outlier. There's actually a few. There's one there, obviously. There's one up here. So, there's one here. So, I know I've got some corrections to do, so before I just average out and smooth it, I'll go back to my sheets of stations and make sure that I didn't make an error there somewhere. That looks like it's exactly 4 inches, which means I may have measured from the wrong side of my story pole thing. Well folks, and here we have it, and after a little tweaking, and I mean a lot of tweaking, I have something that I'm generally really pleased with. It could use a little more resolution, especially up at the bow. In other words, I'll have to put in more control points to get a nice curve there for a 3D model, but on the whole, this is starting to really look fairly accurate. Let's see what it looks like with some shading on. You can easily see here, well, let me put the slightly different shading on here. You can see here the shape of the hull has this hard shine at the stern, at the transom, and that slowly softens up to be relatively smooth up by the time you get to the bow. And that's considered the new hull design, the new Monk design. A lot less roll and a little bit more efficient in the water. What's really nice about it is really deep forefoot. The water line is about here. I think I could have added that. And so it pushes the water down, and then basically this long slope, it's constantly just gliding off the wave that you've created when you push the water down at the bow. I actually love the shape of this boat. Now, it creates some complications in terms of structure, but that's for another time. I think I've done as much as I'm going to do here now, and yeah, move on to building the rest of the inside of the boat. Well, hello and welcome to the Beer of the Week, and I'm so grateful to still have my sweet daughter Caitlin with me, although by the time you're watching this, she's long since gone back to
North Carolina,
to do science stuff.
To do science stuff, exactly.
That's right. That's
to
right.
do my PhD.
Right. Keep science in mind. Okay, what are we drinking, Kate?
We are drinking Dichotomy, which is from the Category 12 brewing company. Where's that? Did you say that's Victoria?
It's nearby, yeah.
And it is a Fooder-aged tart Belgian single.
And we Googled it.
We did Google what Fooder, and it's spelled F-O-E-D-E-R, and I pronounce it Fooder, and Dad said, oh, I'm pretty sure it's Feeder, and then Googled it. Nope, it's definitely Fooder. And Fooder are the barrels that are used to age wine, but apparently people now use them to age their sour beers.
So it's a cask beer, basically.
So it's a cask beer.
Excellent.
Yeah. Perfect. Cool.
Are you gonna fire it up?
And it's also not an IPA. I'd like you to.
That's right.
You to do the honors.
Right. Okay, here we go. Let's see what we think of this.
Let's see. I love that when you first open it and it goes.
A little gas comes out and around, little stuff. Exactly. Let's see how this pours.
My guess is
So
it's
far,
gonna be pretty
so good. Oh my gosh,
yeah,
it's
is that,
soup.
No, I knew it.
Train wreck. Well, this is going to be all over my mustache. I know how this goes. This is mine.
We just take time.
Exactly.
Can I do it?
Yeah, why don't you do that one? This is the section we cut. Who taught you to hold the glass like that? Because that's exactly the right way to do it.
Well, Well, you did.
Oh,
But
okay.
it's also, I worked not very often, but there is something at McGill called Blues Pub,
Right.
which all the engineers, it's like the student bar,
Right.
and there is a beer called I forget what it's called already, but it's like this. It's super, super, super fizzy, and look at that.
So there's already been a few comments last week that Caitlin can pour a beer much better than I can.
You did teach me to pour beer.
Oh yeah, well I was just going hard and fast. This is going to be such
This
a
is gonna
mess.
be such a mess.
Okay, the dichotomy.
Dichotomy.
Category 12.
And there's
there's
some
a dichotomy here.
here. Perfect.
Cheers.
Like that.
So glad to have you here.
So glad to be here. You always look like you. I guess you're asking for
Like
an
I'm
opinion.
looking for your opinion. Exactly.
I don't think it's sour enough.
No,
Yeah.
it's not a cask beer. It's not a sour beer.
Yeah.
It's sort of just a beer.
But it's not. It doesn't say it's a sour. It says it's tart.
Yeah.
It's a Belgian single.
Yeah.
But it's tart.
Yeah.
I was expecting. I was hoping.
You know, the
for
real
some
beer
sour.
aficionados all over the world are just slamming their
It's
heads
true.
and saying, "That's what it's supposed to taste like, you heathens."
I think exactly. I think it's very right. But I do enjoy it. I think if I wasn't
very nice.
expecting sour,
Exactly.
then I'd like it more.
It's very nice.
Mhm.
I love it. Too bad we don't have much. Don't have
Exactly.
much of it.
No.
You need a beer of the week. A word of the week.
You also need a beer.
We do, exactly. You need a word of the week, and be glad it's not a dichotomy.
Dad!
Which
Oh,
is-
you mean the what?
We thought it might have been, right?
True, I thought you said be glad your beer is not dichotomy because you don't like it. But that was
No, not at all. No.
Yes.
It's a good beer. The word of the week is
Science!
science! Because Caitlin is a scientist, and in fact, the label of this dichotomy beer is covered with test tubes and things like that.
Graduated cylinders.
Graduated cylinders and stuff like that. So, the word of the week is science.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you'd like to win a Travels with Geordie t-shirt, put a comment down below with the word of the week, which is science, and I will pick at random from the first 24 hours worth of comments, and you may win a shirt.
No, thanks.
Awesome!
Awesome!
I'm going to miss you.
I'm gonna miss you too, Dad. Thank you so much for having me.
See you again soon.
See you again soon.
Cheers.
Cheers.
You know what? I like it.
No, me
I
too.
think it's good.
I like it.